Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Fortune and Famine. Fortune and Famine is brought to you by Mid-Level Meeple. It's for 2 to 6 players, ages 13 and up, and games range anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. You take on the role of a king of a growing kingdom. Your prophets have warned that a deep and terrible famine will sweep the entire land in a few short years. It will be worse than the small famines that you're accustomed to, requiring much saving and preparation. You must have the most grain stored away by the end of the 3rd year to reign victorious over competing kings. Fortune and Famine is a strategy card game set in medieval times of magic. You play as the ruler of a growing kingdom attempting to store more grain in 12 rounds than opposing rulers. To do that, you will spend silver to bid against other rulers on worker cards which produce unique goods or services for your kingdom. You will need to balance your silver and grain economies, and you will need to take some risks. The primary risk reward comes in the form of famine cards, which show up with increasing regularity as the game progresses. Each round, you must balance your grain resources. Do you store some to keep it safe, or let it grow? But beware, when famine does strike, you will lose half of it. Each player receives their own kingdom board, and this board is where you'll be tracking all the different phases of a round. You also will have your slots for all your workers. Now, you're going to get a common farmer to start, as well as a queen. Now, the queens have all kinds of different abilities. Some allow you to just use their slot as another slot for workers. Others have tokens that may allow you to avoid famine. But just know that you get these dealt to you randomly, and you have a lot of different options that can happen throughout the game based on the type of queen that you have been given. Now, each player also gets a bag where you'll be storing your grain to keep it safe from famine. Also, you have your player token that you'll be using in the higher phase. Speaking of the higher phase, we have the higher board where you'll have the different years of cards, 1, 2, and 3. Now, based on the player count, you'll set up these cards, and each card will have a number at the bottom showing what player count that it is appropriate for. You'll set up those decks, shuffle them up, and get them ready. And at the start of the game, you're going to flip over. The first card will go to the burn or discard pile, and then you'll fill the slots in the higher board, and you're ready to begin. Now, before we jump into the different phases of a round, let's talk about these different cards and how they work. So you've got the common and skilled farmer, which allows you to exchange coin for grain. The common and skilled merchant allows you to exchange grain for silver. The jesters give you a choice between grain or silver. The traders will allow you to immediately trade a number of resources for another, again, grain or coin. The steward is all about spending coin on grain that you can store and keep safe. The pickpocket, as you would expect, allows you to steal coin from another kingdom. The philosopher allows you to pay one of your workers double to double the rewards. And the wizards will do various things, but gives variations in how the resources, grain and coin are gained or stored. Now, in years 2 and 3, you have the opportunity to attack the other kingdoms with Everthor, basically destroying their resources or destroying workers. But if you have a gypsy card, you gain protection. So these are the basics of the different card types. Depending on how well you put these together in your kingdoms will determine how well you gain resources and survive famine when it hits. So every round of the game is divided into 5 phases. You have the higher phase, which we briefly touched on. You've got the attack phase, only in years 2 and 3 though. And then you have the payment phase, followed quickly by the reward phase, and finally the decision phase. So like I said, in the higher phase, the first thing you're doing is filling the higher board based on the player count. Now the first card is always moved to the discard pile in each round when you fill this board. And the players get to decide which cards they want to bid on, spending money, resources in order to do so. But if there happens to be a wizard in play, that is a free card, and on your turn you can just grab that card. You don't have to bid on anything. But in general, you're going after some of these different types of workers that I mentioned before, and you'll place your token along with a number of coin. Now your opponents can all outbid you, and this goes around until someone has actually won the bid for that card. And you'll do this in turn until everyone has gone and either chosen a card or passed. Now, during years 2 and 3, you have the opportunity to attack. If you happen to have the Dark Wizard, then you can go after another player. The Dark Wizard, again, does all kinds of things. He can reduce the amount of resources that a player has, or he can eliminate a worker or stun a worker. Lots of different things based on which of the Dark Wizards you have. Also, if you have a Gypsy, you can block that Dark Wizard. And if you have a pickpocket, this is when you get to pickpocket other kingdoms. Now, if other kingdoms have a pickpocket, then that is null and void. They kind of cancel each other out. But that's how the attack phase basically works. So the payment and reward phase really go hand in hand, as you are paying a worker to fulfill their job. You're trying to get different resources here, obviously. You're spending silver to get grain, or you're spending grain to get silver. And some of the cards are going to just give you these things for free. But you want to have it strategically placed the right type of workers during the different years, as you have limited spots on your board to do so. Now, there's all kinds of different directions to go here as you try to get those resources, but you're paying and gaining, and really that's what the payment and reward phase is all about. And it's important to note that if you do use your wizard, it is a one-time use, so you'll discard it after gaining the resources that it provides. Now, the last phase of your turn is the decision phase. You really have a choice here. Either you gain a resource, or you choose to pay a silver and store as much grain as you deem necessary to protect it from famine, which we'll take a look at next. But you'll put it in your bag to protect it for the rest of the game. So, famine. This is the big thing you're trying to avoid, or protect yourself against, I should say, throughout the game. And it gets increasingly worse as you move through the different years and so forth. But as you draw cards in that higher phase, famine may appear. And if it does, you're going to immediately lose half your unstored grain rounded up. So this is something that you try to avoid as much as possible, but you want to allow stuff to grow and have those resources to use. It is definitely a choice, and you're pushing your luck to some degree, which I like. So then, after the final third year, that last card comes up, then you'll finish out the round and calculate how much grain that you have stored in your bag. Whoever has the most is going to win. Now, the grain that's on your player board, that doesn't count. Only in ties does that count. That will help settle those. But in the end, whoever has the most grain stored will be the ultimate kingdom. Alright folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now with that said, I really like the artwork on these cards, but the real thing here is the decision making. As you populate your kingdom with workers, do you have the right ones in place to get you the maximum amount of resources that you need? And avoiding those famine cards as much as possible, storing grain when it makes sense. And then at the end, obviously having the most. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like something that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.